basic Eastern European ethnocentrism in the chat. Right. It seems my internet has still refused to improve. But I don't know, I guess I have to change the cable. That's the only thing I can imagine being a problem anymore. So I'm going a bit earlier today, and I've got a hard stop at 2 hours. But I haven't gone live for a while, and I'd like to break the very poor continuum. Seems to be all right. Excellent, excellent. Hello, Vampire Frog. Taliesin MacDonald. That's a suspicious spelling of a name. Sugar Kush, Athanasius, Austin de Tullio, Kitty Pants. There are words that are just funny to say with a British accent. Kitty Pants is definitely one of them. Labor Day. I've never actually understood what Labor Day was in the United States. You know, as a formerly communist country, we have like Day of Work or Labor, which is the 1st of May. Clearly communist, also clearly satanic, but that's a different story. But it's just, you know, going out and drinking and eating a lot of roasted meat. So, you know, that's fun. Heinrich Schemmel. No, Schmel. Sorry. Heinrich Schmel. Aaron, etc. Okay. People are gathering. Misinformation, which is, as I've learned, not an allusion to a South Park joke. Kanan is here. It's an excuse to barbecue and swim on a day off. Yes, it's the same thing here, but I don't know. Is it just labor as in like day for workers? Because I remember seeing something it being also connected to labor in the sense of birth. So I'm not actually sure. So that is not something that works in our language. So I don't know, it worked yesterday. Well, that's because you might be part German and you just like working. Have you considered that, Kanan? I will never forget one of my favorite comment exchanges where where I left a comment like a Serbian joke that the world should be thankful for Nikola Tesla, because if Serbs didn't give the world Nikola Tesla, they'd all be watching TV in the dark. And the guy comments, like, yes, but how would your TV work without electricity? And someone responds, saying, are you German? And he says, yes, I don't see how that is important. Oh, it was glorious. It's like having a whole country of intelligent, hardworking murder machines. Tesla was friends with Marina Abramovich. Of course, who wasn't? And who wouldn't be? What time is it over there, Posh? It's 7:36 currently. PM. So, as I said, I've got a hard stop, but the 2 hours, I think, I'm still trying to work this idea out. So I'd like feedback on it as well, because it's not a particularly tangible thing to discuss. It's more of an interplay of mindsets that I believe produces the current way of thinking. And it is incredibly pervasive and it's also invasive in the sense that it tends to really overtake a lot of other types of thinking, sort of infects it with this idea of almost pragmatism, which I'm not particularly happy with. But, as I try to show my case, you'll get what I'm saying. And I'll start soon enough, at about 10 minutes. I really need to learn like those fun little things that Jim Bob does with like intro and stuff. Otherwise, I'd have to play my own intros, and until I get a keyboard, that's not going to happen. My guitar skills are not good enough to play intros, but with a piano, it will be very fun. Have you seen that Marina Abramovich piece where she runs repeatedly into a wall? Good stuff. No. I know she had one here in Serbia, like in Belgrade, where she just had a donkey there, and that's it. Someone paid that ungodly woman money to have a donkey present at a spot. The nose does not lie. The Posh. Oh God, that always makes me laugh. Schmanty Shemite. Is that supposed to be like what's his name? Give him a little slap. Can't remember his name right now. People are greeting each other. Intro sing-alongs, Posh. Because my voice dropped pretty early on, I was still in my primary school choir. And it was just about the time where the school choirs stop being just unison and you start getting different voices. We don't even call them, soprano, alto, tenor, and basso or bass. It was just first voice and second voice, or sometimes first, second, and third voice. But it's not that much about like vocal range, the pitch. It's more just different. You start singing different measures, like canons. And I remember someone composed a canon on like a children's song, like going quack, 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 whatever. And I remember I was so embarrassed singing it, and it was this big festival, school festival, and we were in the local theater. And I remember I was just there, crossing my arms, just hoping to die for some reason. A good Irish rebel song intro. On the 4th of July, 1806, we set sail from the sweet cove of Cork. She just runs into a wall over and over again to prove something. Funniest thing ever. You could be on Serbian Idol. I don't think so. There are shows I might apply for, but I don't think it's worth it. You have to travel, and traveling is of Beelzebub. So you still have cannons, or rounds, as we would call them. I understand there's a certain beauty to them. It's melodically very pleasing. I just didn't like singing, pok, 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 pok. There was also a point at which my now unfortunately late professor of Serbian, she just applied me for this competition for recitations, right? Recital, and I'm not sure you would call that recitals. And she also, she just met me like in the hallway. Oh, I signed you up for a competition. I'm like, oh, great, thank you. And she also assigned a poem for me, and something called like Little Zebras. and it's talking about how like lines in a poem are like little zebras that and I was, well, second year of high school. Can you imagine the shock and dismay I'd have to go through? Well, she was a wonderful woman, extremely intelligent. Me being like the nerd rebel, like I wasn't rebellious in any other way. Not a fan of being rebellious, but I knew I refused to read like like works from certain countries. I just didn't want to because I'm an ass. And she had to deal with me, so the least I could do is, respect her back. Right. So my Balkan views of ethnic tolerance aside. So today's topic is planned obsolescence and unplanned obsolescence, how they interact and how they actually breed each other. Because that's actually a very serious thing. Now, just a moment. Planned obsolescence is a term that's used for, it's usually for industry, where people design appliances, or usually it's appliances, right? But it also can encompass things like your cell phones, but it can also encompass infrastructure, roads, bridges, etc. That it is planned for them to become obsolete, whether through deterioration or just they plan to have something new come along and replace it. Oh, the iPhone 79, what's it do? Well, basically the same thing as 78, but you've got this new app and, you should pay thousands of dollars for it. Because why not? Right? This can be done in very sophisticated ways and also in unsophisticated ways. And you will notice that there are plenty of jokes being made about modern appliances and how quickly they stop working. Compared to even like in the West, it was a joke in like Yugoslavia how quickly things from abroad break down. But even you have memes like a refrigerator from the 70s, and the refrigerator says, "I will outlive you and everyone you love." But that was pretty common, right? About a month ago, my electric stove broke down and it just stopped working, right? It was fixed like once or twice before that. They're also designed to be very difficult to fix, or it's supposed to fail in a way that you're supposed to buy a new one, but nevertheless. So for about 2 days, I had to cook using an old stove that's literally older than me. And it worked with no problems whatsoever. So you can have a 30-plus-year-old stove working with no problem. Meanwhile, this one didn't last for 5 years. Now, this isn't coincidental. And what you will notice is a pattern of things happening to stop working, breaking down, not too long after the warranty wears off. So that can't be coincidental, now can it? Our good old friend coincidence strikes again, and again, which sort of builds a case against coincidentiality. But likewise, I'm not here to just talk about like appliances, but in a sense, I have to say this before I move on. It's easy to say, oh, the evil capitalist pig dogs, right? They just want to be greedy, and you, instead of having one refrigerator that lasts you for 50 years, they make you buy 10 new ones that last for 5 years each. Cars too, yes, Liz. Although with cars, it's not, they don't risk it too much because it can kill people, and quite a few people, in fact, depending on how it breaks down. But you see the wear and tear tends to do more damage to them. So in the defense of the practice, name the big dogs, to defend the practice to an extent, and a very limited extent of that, there is one problem, the basic problem of innovation. So if you imagine that everyone got like the first proper Ford car, right? The government stepped in, pumped a lot of money into production and gave everyone a car. You no longer, or it's not that you don't have it at all, but the incentive to try and produce something else, something better that can compete, is basically non-existent. So you have to see it from that standpoint, right? You open up a market for cars, for whatever type of appliance, and people can start producing them. I'm not naive to think that competition solves everything. I'm very much aware that people try to go cheap with materials, with labor costs and whatever to try and be in competition. It's not like, oh, I'll produce a higher quality good for lower prices. That is what drives innovation, right? Let's not be silly. We do not have Walmarts in Serbia. We have European chains. So that's one thing. Another thing is, I don't buy the idea that people would, out of some patriotic duty, start buying local. Some, and in fact many, would. But the joke I make is like, people could live stream, like a 4-year-old trying to assemble like an iPhone, and live stream the child being whipped into doing it, and people would still buy it. But this electric drill is like $5 cheaper now, right? So we shouldn't be naive on either side. People are rather cruel and tend to care only about what affects them. Thank you, Ayn Rand. On the other hand, so that is to say that firstly, it will seriously stop innovation if you plan for something to last 100 years. Secondly, people will buy cheaper, lower quality things thinking they save money. I mean, just imagine like the practice of saying, oh, it's on for sale, and how many types of loopholes people seek, like, oh, you have to have it for this amount of time, or on a certain price. You can't just put the price you wanted and then slap a 20% off sticker. Like, that's illegal. But then I remember, I can't remember which American company exactly, but one company opened a shop in some completely, barely inhabited town, village, whatever, in the United States, and just ratcheted up prices, like insanely high prices, just so they can legally then say, oh, look, we did sell it for this. And then where they actually mean to sell things, they actually say how much it's off, but it's the price they wanted to put there all along. I'm getting a bit off topic. But also, if I'm going to sell you a fridge that's going to last 50 years, I'm going to have to sell it at a price that would last me, right, 50 years. Otherwise, I'm going to, and that's going to be pretty pricey, right? Because quality demands higher price. But if this person over there is selling them at a cheaper price, but it lasts as I said, just 10% of the time, right? 5 years, right? People are going to go for the cheaper thing, right? So you actually have an incentive also to build things that last not as long, because you would have to charge for not selling more of them. Right, so there's the entire interplay. It's easy to be cynical about it, and the cynicalness really skews one's, view. They just want to blame either, the capitalists want this, the CCP is selling us all of this rubbish, right? Well, people sell you what they can expect you to buy. So there is a conflict of interest there. That's just on the economic side of it, and that's not the primary purpose of or the primary topic which I want to address. The primary thing I want to address is that actually ideas nowadays, ways of thinking nowadays, whether it be theological, ideological, economic, interpersonal, whichever level of analysis you wish to take, things are not designed to last. They are, and I put in brackets, so it's unplanned obsolescence, because there's a difference between going from, selling appliances to selling worldviews. Because I don't think most people who have this worldview that is just ready to become obsolete at any moment, that they want it to become obsolete. That's not, why would you? You would at least want it to outlive you, but also you would like to see it implemented and for as long as possible. But the thing is that we are living basically in a world that you get planned obsolescence in two ways, as I can see it. So one way is that you're actually surrounded by planned obsolescence. Things shift so quickly. Ways of thinking shift quickly. Means of communications. Author Eric says, "Lo, this world passes away, but Serbia remains forever." That's my favorite part of Ecclesiastes. So, as I was saying, if you're surrounded by planned obsolescence, you will plan things without having the idea of obsolescence at all. But because everything shifts so quickly, becomes obsolete so quickly, and you are trying to create a worldview to solve these problems, they just shift or disappear. You cannot have a consistent worldview. And this is the problem of what I keep, ranting on about, what I call don't invert the devil. Right? You do not try to go for truth by flipping a lie, because a lie is not just 180% degrees from the truth, right? That works on just a semantic level. Oh, what is the opposite of truth? Lies. Okay, but is lie the opposite of the truth? No. Again, not how it works. And if you plan on solving the world like that, you fall into exactly this unplanned obsolescence. D. Sims says, are we planned obsolescence? I'm not sure. Naturally, I want to say yes. Naturally, as in it's in my nature to expect the worst always. So that's fun. But also, I'm not sure. It's sort of the entire thing, like Tucker Carlson said, he expects a hot war between Russia and the United States in the next year. I give it like 30% chance, because the stakes are very high, and people in power still need the infrastructure. They need the populace for now. The AI isn't that good. And like, it's easy to warmonger. It's easy to just fearmonger as well. And I think they know that like Europe will become desolated, like just destroyed. And what's the point of doing that in order to maintain power? Like, again, this is the cynicism. If I can convince you they would do literally anything, including getting their own projects demolished in a very short time, I've sort of turned you into a non-entity as far as thinking is concerned. We see that a lot. Trump is one example of it. You can tell a progressive anything about Trump and they believe it, but on the other side, you can say anything about Putin or Xi Jinping and they'll believe it. And it doesn't matter because you're just trying to manufacture consent. So it becomes rather silly. Oh, China is going to invade Taiwan. Why? Taiwan, if anyone has ever seen like the topography of Taiwan, it's like the least invadable thing on earth. Because like the makeup, the geographic makeup of the island doesn't allow for it, and the semiconductors are going to be worth going out in open sea and getting pummeled all the time, and then you having to destroy everything on the island to try and capture it. It's nonsense. If they're going to capture Taiwan, they're not going to do it by military means. It's stupid. Also, China is not a particularly stable geopolitical entity. Not economically, not demographically, not politically. It's just not. But because you can just say, oh, China will X, and people will just go for it, just start foaming at the mouth, you can convince them again of everything. And don't allow yourselves to fall into that, because it's the point where your critical thinking skills are suspended, right? And I did go quite a bit off topic, haven't I? We went into geopolitics, but trying to get back into the topic, right? Ideas that are not constructed. Are not constructed with the intention of falling apart. Fall apart because they're either surrounded by ideas that are planned to fall apart, right? Your red flags, your red herrings, even all sorts of things that are injected into culture. So you try to form your ideas around that, but that's planned obsolescence surrounding your idea making, meaning that the product will be unplanned obsolescence. That's one way. The other one is basing things on the negatives. Negative as opposed to affirmative, not as opposed to positive necessarily, right? So, we need to stop X, and then you form your worldview around stopping X, right? We need to stop feminism. Okay, I agree. And then you try to envelop or force your mind into solving that one problem. That's not going to work. It's just not. Being anti-feminist can only be a good thing if it's a function of your affirmative worldview, in my case, Orthodox Christianity, right? If it is a function of your affirmative worldview, then you can be properly anti-feminist. If you just become, an actual misogynist, like you actually start hating women because all you hear online is like men being destroyed in divorce courts, and custody battles, which is just the most tragic thing imaginable. So I understand where the rage comes from. It's not unjustified rage. It's that you're not going to solve it by then creating a system that is built to fight that particular thing. Because you have all types of other, first of all, you create blind spots. So like you always feel sorry for men, always hate women, right? They're always to blame. That's simply not reality. So you disengage reality in order to fight an actual problem. And your ideas will become obsolete. Another way that we can see how this is going on, right? We need to, all the civil rights battles, right? And everything is a civil rights battle nowadays. Everything from, I'm fat, so fight for me, and I don't want to buy an extra seat on the airplane. I don't want to do anything. Just people should coalesce around me and protect me, right? You see how that is easily pushed to the point of even warmongering. Oh, Uganda's anti-gay bill, right? Oh, really? Maybe you've seen this, a CNN article saying how two men were charged under the new anti-gay legislation under aggravated homosexuality, and that carries a death sentence. And they just mentioned that. In the article, you will find the reasons, but in the headline and that subheadline, whatever it's called, it just says like, oh, isn't this horrible? Two gay people being charged. One is charged for raping a disabled 41-year-old man, and the other for raping a child. Aggravated homosexuality. But, it's what is called lie by structure, right? You mention these things like in the, not even in the last paragraph, but like the antepenultimate paragraph, because you can just scroll down to the very bottom and maybe you would read that, but you're not going to go like a couple before that. Otherwise, you just read the whole article. And that's not how you follow the 99 to 1 rule. Right. Wise words, Vampire Frog. They done killed him for being gay, boo-hoo. Yes. Spoken like a true poet. But you see, now you can shift these ideas as per your liking, as per your the result you want to see that is completely disconnected from that. And we're having also in everything, we're having shifts, right? Like if you want to change to an electric car, like EV traffic system, you're going to need a lot of batteries, and you're going to need a lot of electricity. And apparently the only way you can produce electricity is by green energy, not nuclear. Just the ones that actually don't work. Those are the ones we're rooting for. And turns out those aren't made by, by fair maidens weaving flowers in the fields. No, it turns out you need a lot of strip mining. And strip mining in certain areas of the world, right? I love it. I love how everything can be absolutely nonsensical, but it gets the job done. And that's what I'm saying. Those are the planned obsoletes, and then you start thinking, oh, we need to fight the wokeism because the wokeists are going to attack Uganda. No. You fight wokeism for the sake of fighting wokeism, because it is an abhorrent system. And you fight it because you have this other worldview, this Christian worldview, that, again, as a function of that, you fight wokeism. If you just try to put yourself at mind for war, it is the most abusable thing in the world, and we see it all around us. Another very common source of these ideas that become obsolete all the time is whenever you debate atheists. Whenever you debate them, everything proves their point. Richard Dawkins, who said that one of the best proofs of evolution, especially an evolution that isn't a guided process, but unguided evolution, is junk DNA. Turns out there's no such thing. Oh, well, now that's the biggest proof for evolution. Like everything is a proof of your system, because you are supposed to be creating a worldview on empirical data. But that data is going to change over time. That's necessary with science. So if you just keep changing it and it can change back, you never have an overarching system. That is what philosophy is for. You even have philosophy of science, of course. That is why presuppositionalism is so important, and tag is important. Transcendental argument for God is important, because you need to nest that in a framework in which you can actually operate. Otherwise, you get the sorts of ways of thinking like Jim Bob was critiquing yesterday. I joined him for a while. But you get very poor thinking. And it doesn't matter to them that this decade you are so fervent about this one point, and then the facts themselves change, and now you're on this completely fervent in this next point. And I understand the thinking, but New Atheists told me philosophy was a waste. Yes, I think even I'm so bad with names today. I don't know what's happening. Stephen Hawking, I think, even said philosophy is obsolete, which is a philosophical statement. Right. So, yes, authoric sloganeering, it's one of my greatest foes in reality. But it's okay to take new things into account, because we are discovering new things. We are discovering a lot of things that weren't available, for example, to earlier Christians. But as archaeology becomes more advanced because of technology, because of, wars stop in a certain area, so now you can actually explore them. Or again, technology can just help you deal with the weather and the conditions there, etc., etc. Like, we have found a lot of things from the Bible, including like the bed of King Og, the last of the Raphaim. So that's a fun find. But things like archaeological evidence of historical King David. We found all types of cities, all sorts of places. I'm not going to get into like the Exodus right now, because it's going to be a massive topic, right? It's not just going through the Red Sea. Like, I'm sorry, that's the Greeks call it the Red Sea, but it's actually a much more complex thing, sea of reeds, and again, not to get into that now. But in the 19th century, you had the German liberal critics, right, Christians, allegedly, who just kept saying, like, denying miracles of Christ, saying that King David was not an actual figure. Like, you see how easily that can become just atheism. But they were trying to have this idea of, well, we have no proof of King David. Like, everyone seems to be calling Israel the house of Omri and stuff. So he was probably a mythological figure, etc., etc. But then you find it, and all of a sudden you ship the entire thing. So it's barely standing on any legs. Atheists will usually default to naturalism, interest ethics, or some type of might makes right. Okay, I read that horribly, sorry. But yes, they go to naturalism, but they don't apply it, right? Because naturalism comes with its logical conclusions, and the internal system needs to be followed consistently, but they don't do it because, again, the naturalism is sort of swatting away the people who are trying to say, no, there's more than just matter and energy in the universe. There's consciousness, but no. And you will notice, like, if you cannot derive your ethics and have them not be just mere preferences, except if you have God. Like, that's very simple. Otherwise, you would have to actually say that the postmodernists, were right in their critiques. Because they said, well, no, it's nothing objective, it's just who has the power to enforce their particular paradigm. And that is what you have to say, right? This whole idea of humanism and stuff, that's religious talk. Oh, every human being has a right to X, Y, and Z. Right? Why? Doesn't matter, because, right, you are implementing a system in like a Christian culture, so people sort of go, yeah, I guess that makes sense, but you have no foundations for it. Because you rejected the idea of being given by God, for example, like you would have in the Constitution, American Constitution, right? Like all of these things were derived from religious thinking. Why not? Yasarian, I'm not sure what exactly you're referring to. Cool headphones. Are you also a helicopter pilot? No. But yes, I do seem to have a strange relationship with headphones. I always end up seeming eccentric. Oops, sorry, I have to answer the door. Be right back. Sorry about that. Where were we? Right. The idea of inconsistent worldviews I keep breaking down because they're not built around presuppositions, or at least acknowledged presuppositions. You sort of my meme I made, how atheists feel superior intellectually when they decimate presuppositionalism by presupposing empiricism. That's fun. As being funny, YX, why not? Yeah, that's actually a good thing, because you can actually sniff out a lot of poor thinking by just being, annoying, very Socrates-like. Why? And why not also applies. Serbian pizza delivery guy. Pizzas don't exist in Serbia. Oh God. I will not have my culinary culture critiqued by Asians. Like that's just impermissible. Doorbell designed by Nikola Tesla runs on electricity drawn from the finger of the person who rings it. That sounds ritualistic. All our pizza is made delivered by Eastern imports. Okay. So, as I said, it's still nascent in my mind how exactly to explain all this. I'm giving you more the thought process than a finished product. But I see it clearly. We saw it when Jim Bob debated Nathan. Like when I jumped on Nathan's channel, Digital Gnosis, I believe it's called. When I debated Dillahunty, when Jim Bob talked to Pine Creek Doug, right? You see that this is a very incomplete worldview. It sort of demands you carve out exceptions to maintain it. And this is the problem of a lot of political ideologies and ways of thinking we have today, right? Again, I think this was when I debated Casimir brought up this child in England I think under a year old, but very, very young, extremely young, had a very, very rare disease. And they couldn't deal with it. The NHS couldn't deal with it. And if I remember correctly, in Italy, some clinic offered experimental treatment because it was either try this or the child dies, right? Because if the child dies even with the treatment, at least you tried. And the NHS literally banned it. They said, no, you don't have a right to do this. And there's all types of, ethical procedures. People might say, oh, we don't want the child to suffer more than they should. But then people gave the argument that parents have a right to decide this thing. But here's the kicker. I want to agree with that immediately. But then the kicker is, okay, the parents get to decide whether their child should transition, or can you have the government bureaucrats coming around telling them what they can't do with their child, right? Well, now you're sort of having to pull back on the original principle you were trying to build things on, and say, no, the state gets to decide what you can and can't do. And this is the problem. This is the whole problem of just trying to go against things. You think you can just save everything by saying, oh, we are now anarcho-capitalist because the government does all of these horrible things, as if the horrible things don't exist outside of government, like the exact same thing. Like, you're not going to get warlord-like figures and mafia-like structures that are going to do the exact same thing as the government. But there will be literally no talking back. It will just be violence. Maybe Posh should have a combo with the trans woman Andrew Wilson has talked to. I thought you were going to say Andrew was a trans woman, and I could believe it. The child should be allowed to transition only if the parents are also allowed to transition in not parents. I see what you mean. You mean take away the child, but right. But you see how the libertarians seem to think we are all moral angels, but for the government. Yes. I can't remember, maybe someone here knows, like, which exact American founding father said if we had a populace of angels governed by men, you wouldn't need the government. If you had a government of angels governing human beings, you don't need restrictions on the government, but because you have men ruling men, you need restrictions on the government, right? I think that's a great insight. Especially if we're talking about secular forms of governance, right? Not the monarchy or something. Abraham Lincoln. Are you sure, Athanasius? Because it seems to me like everyone would say Abraham Lincoln for anything. So doesn't matter. Great thought. So, right, it's always finding the singular point of failure. And, I mean, Abraham Lincoln wasn't a founding father. I don't know why I thought he was serious. As a whole, problems only found in first world countries. No child will choose hormones over food or shelter. Well, yes, but you see, it's not like you don't get different problems with lacking, first world luxuries, or just the stability that exists in the first world as compared to poorer, right, developing countries. Because you're going to get a lot of just violence, a lot of gangs, a lot of things. People will basically say, oh, the government is corrupt, so I get to, right, steal and do whatever I want. Right, I understand that it's a first world problem, but it requires, therefore, a solution that is designed for it. And again, it's very difficult because people become very entitled. The whole midwit problem, like it becomes like it's my right to do whatever I want, right? And then you have the conservatives saying that, and you have the progressives or the liberals saying that, right? But they all have a mind sort of intrinsic. You're supposed to just guess it, like what is obviously wrong. That's going to be a problem. Thailand has a lot of transformers, yes, but that's going to get very dark very quickly. Also, Eric, why it really pays off for them to have so many. Iran does. Iran, I also believe, is number one in rhinoplasties. They hate Israel that much. But in Iran, they basically had some transgender activists in the 90s or whatever. And, the government wanted to clamp down, but then the person said, well, show me where this is forbidden in Islamic rulings, and they couldn't find it. So it's like, well, I guess this is allowed now. So you have a pretty high percentage also, not just because of that, but also because if you're found indisposed with another man, you are offered, if you were the one on the receiving end, you're offered to become a woman, because then it's not homosexuality and you don't have to be killed. So if it's being transed or executed, a lot of people go for the former. It gets very difficult. So Yossarian, I understand how you think it's only like a problem of excess, but it's not. A lot of things play into it. Sort of what's embedded in what you're saying is that unless you are somehow corrupted, right, and not in the sense that we would talk about the fall of man and stuff, but even in this state, this very Rousseauian idea that something has to happen to you, otherwise you would just be rational, right? The new atheists used to say that, but for superstition, like religion, which any type of religion, right? People would just be rational, we wouldn't be doing horrible things. And it took about a decade from that, people wouldn't circumcise children unless they were brought into it by superstitious nonsense, to, well, time to mutilate children on a mass scale. And just I'm not in favor of circumcision. I am actually in favor of banning it. But at least you still have like the organ. So, right, we are seeing how quickly the idea that, if not for this, right, we would all just operate fine. No, evil has to be kept at bay actively. You cannot keep it at bay. It's not the exception to the rule that things aren't going well. I wasn't clear, sorry. Children transition out of a fad, not necessity, at least not in the West. It's allowed because some government threatens to take the child away. Yes, I see what you mean. Because it can be considered child abuse. And I know of legislation that is geared towards that. Denying your child's transitioning, right, is parental abuse nowadays. So great. There was that girl who testified before Congress that she had what I don't think is a particularly uncommon experience. She started going into puberty, right? All sorts of changes, hormonal, anatomical, and with that comes a lot of social changing. And you're still not equipped mentally to deal with that. And, I'm guessing a lot of girls think, if I was a boy, I wouldn't have to be going through this or something. Like a lot of boys go through the phase of, look, all the girls are getting attention. And like a pubescent boy is like the least attractive thing to women that's imaginable. Right, your voice is cracking all the time. You have, all sorts of skin imperfections, as they're politely called. Right, you have no bravado behind you, etc. So maybe a lot of them think, oh, look how much praise I would get. It must be so easy because it's always, the grass is always greener and stuff like that. But back to the girl. So she talked to her parents about it. They took her to a doctor, and the doctor said, you will either have a dead daughter or a living trans son. And this is supposed to be an expert, and you understand how they would freak out, right? I'm a philosophy and theology nerd and stuff like that. Most people aren't. Most people just want to live regular lives. They're not interested in these things, which is also why I'm so against democracy. But nevertheless, I can't imagine what went through their head. But in the end, she underwent a double mastectomy and testosterone treatment. But then it stopped. And now she testified before Congress, as I said, and talked about, pleaded people to stop it. Peace to the posh redneck from the machine lies. Hello. Haven't seen you in quite a while. And hello to you too. Right? But evil is essential to achieve Agenda 2030. I'm not actually sure why we would, again, this invert the devil stuff. I don't understand why we would take those agendae and take them at face value, or they would be no, sorry about that, brain glitch. Why do you think they're not red herrings? They can easily be so. I don't know why I would trust the liars. I know people say, oh, it's the revelation of the method. That would mean, how would you distinguish revelation of the method from red herrings? Like, you're sort of presupposing it. Poisoning the well, yes, in a sense, but if they're governing through lies, they can mix truth in with them. Many wise people have spoken of how it's more dangerous. A semi-truth is more dangerous than a lie because it's much harder to detect. So, of course, you can just throw out all sorts of information, some true, some untrue, and then watch the people squabble over it. You can just throw out two lies that just is like red meat to particular groups of people, and then watch them squabble over it. That's one of the most common things in politics. Yes, lies that lead to truth, and truth that leads to lies. Yes, because it's not as simple as black and white. It's binary. No, it's non-binary. Lies are non-binary, and non-binaries are a lie. See, I can design refrigerator magnets now. Right. So that's my basic exposition. Again, I'm still working on it, and I'd like to hear feedback. So whoever can, whoever is willing to give feedback, you are all welcome to. In the comments, like people who know me, you can message me and stuff. But now I'm going to open up to the panel for an hour. As I said, I've got a hard stop at 9:30 for me, which is in an hour wherever you are. Yes, but isn't monarchy... Sorry, let's post the link first. won't pin it because I'm not sure how much time I've got. Yes, but isn't monarchy just a roundabout form of democracy since they are chosen for the most part? No, not really. That would have to be a separate stream. Because you would have to say chosen how exactly, like you didn't have the type of voting that you have nowadays. But even after that, the way it operates is not the same thing. We as Orthodox Christians definitely view the monarchy as almost, what to say, liturgical. It's not liturgical, sacramental. Whoops. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Okay, so I hear myself very, very strongly, so I'm not sure how that's come to pass. Whoops.
Has it stopped?
Let me try. Yes, I still hear myself. And I'm not that self-involved to want to hear myself. Okay, so just mute when you're not speaking and go ahead.
All right, I'm right next to a road, so let me just walk this way for a sec. So unplanned obsolescence. I think a lot about like entropy. So entropy in the sense that things are always not in a like a thermodynamic way that things are losing energy, but things are becoming like more and more or less and less ordered rather. So like, you know, the garage is somehow always accumulating dust. You know, the car, whether you replace the oil, is always accumulating grease. Your body is always accumulating some inflammation. In fact, I was thinking about like if you've ever been to the beach, Posh.
Unfortunately, yes.
So, you know, when we were kids, you'd make a sand castle, right? And the thing that you'd do is you'd make a moat, and then you and but the ocean always won. You know, the ocean, your work, your toil, your effort to build the wall, it always was reduced to nothing. Like anyway, maybe that was something analogous to what you were talking about.
Okay, so I also gave it thought, like, what's the difference between just things falling apart and unplanned obsolescence? So that's why I chose to sort of give it a visual aid as like bracketing the UN before planned obsolescence, to just make sure I connect unplanned to the planned, right? Because obviously, as technology advances, things will change. Like the climate also changes, right? Not the garbage we have to deal with on a daily basis, right? Because you ate a steak now, children are dying in Africa. But climate does change. There's plenty of settlements, you know, in the Middle East that have dockyards and which is now in the middle of a desert. And I doubt many people are as eccentric enough to build them there for no reason. Right, but climate changes, so you're going to have to emigrate, for example. That is going to cause all types of changes. So you can't plan something perfectly. But so this is what I would say is the difference, is that it is a function of planned obsolescence, right, based on it. And that is why if you want to have the type of, like you mentioned sand castles, but everything basically, right? Your house itself is going to, like, the sun is going to destroy a lot of things. It's going to destroy your car if you leave it there. Weather patterns of all types are going to be destroyed.
So wait, is this like so you know, our system, the way our mental architecture, the capacity for you to, you know, look at a certain set of data or evidence and then plan towards a meaningful future. You're saying that process is always under revision. I mean, that almost sounds like a Jordan Peterson Gnostic thing. Or you're saying, like, I could be just completely wrong. Your capacity to plan and predict for a certain outcome is always going to be limited.
Yes, you can't build a civilization off of being against something. That's one thing. Because you're trying to produce a civilization, that means fending off a lot of things, right? You want to, you can't say, I'm going to build a civilization based on hating the Roman Empire. That's not going to work, right? Especially when the Roman Empire collapses. You're sort of out of, fuel for all the things you wish to do. But Protestantism is a good example of this, right? Because they try to protest Rome, and then, okay, what are you rebuilding? There is no obvious thing they are rebuilding, right? And that's why it keeps branching out so much. Because, oh, I take this verse to obviously mean X, Y, and Z, right? That's why you have unplanned obsolescence, because it's based out of trying to combat Rome. And, you know, you keep seeing people nowadays, at least, constantly calling each other like, oh, what are you, some type of wannabe Roman papist, right? Because, oh, you believe you have a sacerdotal priesthood, you believe you should have a hierarchy, you believe in at least some of the sacraments, right? No, you are a halfway papist, right? And that is what I mean. It will become obsolete by the same mechanism that has produced it. That's why it's unplanned. Like, Luther didn't say, well, I'll create this thing that's going to fall apart very quickly, right? But because of this.
Am I off base by, like, I might just be repeating myself. Am I off base, like the human person is trying to make this total system, but anything that you put at the top of the system, whether it's against or for, it's always lacking. It's always an idol. So if you're you know, arranging your life around, I don't know, it would be the acquisition of money, right? Because money solves all these temporary problems or something. It becomes sort of like an idol, or something like that.
But my idea isn't so much about creating an idol out of a particular system or something. It's more like the way of approaching things. If you base, like, orthodoxy is based on preserving the teachings, and it does so with not just the scriptures, but with history as well, and with a lineage, like the apostolic lineage. So you can't get these, improv takes on, oh, the barcodes are the mark of the beast, which was a literal take, even in Greece, I believe. But right, the Jabbies also call the mark of the beast, etc., right? Because you can sort of improv it. But we are fighting to protect the teachings of the church. And as a function of that, we debate Catholics, we debate Protestants of all stripes, and non-Christians, right? But the point is affirmative. The point isn't to fight against this other thing, because if you fight something, it will necessarily become obsolete, especially when it's sort of like a broad thing. Oh, we should fight temptations and passions and sin, right? That's a very general term as a form of duty of you being a Christian, right? It's and that's why, even though the conditions change,
You know, what's weird is, you know, a lot of the church fathers talk about that sin is a result of a lack of love for God. So like for me in my own life, whether it's eating too much or sleeping too late or pornography or whatever it is, those, you know, when you invest yourself in fighting against X, Y, and Z, it's like this weird preoccupation with the self. It's like okay.
But why take it even to the level of love for God? Could you mute me, please? Sorry, just really discombobulating. But think of it like if you are lazy and don't get up on time, I don't know, to prepare breakfast for your children, right? Does that mean that how is it any different that you don't love them enough to sacrifice yourself? That's, of course, also pride kicking in. Like, I deserve this hour, right? And you get one of those mugs that says, don't talk to me before I've had my coffee, right? Being extremely passive aggressive. But it's now a quirky thing you do. Likewise with God, like if you are trying to, whatever you are doing, that's self-indulging, it's obviously because you think this is more important than God.
Right. Well, that's like a faculty of desire.
Yes, we would say that.
I'm sorry, I'm on a busy street, so that's part of the reason why the noise is so bad.
Nick! Oh, that would be glorious. So, I'm guessing people can hear me. That's if no, that's a ruined joke right there. Sorry for being retarded, but yes, faculties of desire, right? But also desire, depending on how you use it. Right? Is it just the will straying from God? Sometimes people use desire. Let me give you a fun linguistic point. The word lust, as it exists in English, has its connotations for usually sexual desires, right? Strong sexual desires and not particularly licit ones. But in German, the word Lust just means to want something. Ich habe Lust für so on and so forth. I want that thing. So you see how the point I'm trying to make is like how desire is also, you know, you can desire a closer union with God as a good thing, but you can just use it always as a negative thing, as this overpowering, like a passion thing.
I'm trying to connect the dots. Maybe it's because I missed the first little bit of your stream. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump on and help me.
Okay, Matthew is here.
What's up, man?
Oh, nothing much. How are you?
I'm good. This is a little off the topic of religion, but just talking about obsolescence, I think there is an aspect that happens sometimes within a large company, whether it's a software company or even a car manufacturer, where you have so many people working in these companies, and you have people that are, their job is to find and fix bugs or fix flaws. So therefore, they are constantly having to update things. And in that process, it sort of breaks it. Like, for an example, I guess like in maybe video games or like Photoshop or something, you will have software engineers who it's their sole purpose and their only reason for their job is to fix bugs and to update things. So they are sort of forced to fix things, and in the process of the update, they end up breaking other things that maybe the programmers saw that they didn't see. and it just sort of I don't guess that would be intentional obsolescence, maybe, or I guess it would just be a product of like large companies that do that by accident.
I actually think that's more like an immune system. So you're trying not to become obsolete. You're trying to fix things so as like introspection on a personal level, on a spiritual level, is very important. You try to think, am I wrong in thinking this? Am I doing this or that? Sometimes you figure out you were wrong about something. But that's not just planned obsolescence. That's part of you trying to make up for lack of knowledge or discernment at certain points. But I would say that's actually the opposite of what I'm trying to say, because people, what you're talking about again is trying to fix problems, whereas this is having problems built into the system so as to make it obsolete, because then you need to replace it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and that's why it is a little off topic, but it's maybe instead of unplanned obsolescence, this would be just it would seem like it's unplanned if your program is constantly being updated, but it may be just a product of the nature of a large company. Because if you were a small software company or a small manufacturer, you wouldn't want to create things that break quickly, because that would make your company would suck. But if you're large enough and you can justify it, and you've got a big enough, I guess, following or customer base, then you're able to do that. But anyway, man, I'm gonna hop off, man. It's been good talking to you.
Okay, thank you for jumping on. God bless.
God bless.
So what I would say about that is I see what he means, but I also want to mention there's a level of complexity that you reach that sort of makes failure more likely, right? If you're leading like a band of rugged ruffians and there's like 10 of you, that's not the same thing as leading an entire army. It requires a lot more things can go wrong in the chain of command, and you don't know everyone personally, so you can't make the best decisions, or at least make decisions of as higher quality as you could if you're just like I said, a group of 10 ruffians. So that also rises when you talk about very complex software, which Photoshop definitely is. The more functions you gain, the more opportunity for something to go wrong. That's why a machine gun is much more likely to break down or fail than like an iron rod, because it's just a piece of metal you hit people with. But you also see how you'd rather have a machine gun than an iron rod. Okay, Neurojack, you've jumped on. What do you have to say? Can you hear me? You're muted. Okay, maybe he's having technical difficulties. D-Sims says, innovation naturally makes things obsolete. Yes, but again, the thing is, things change, things advance, but you have the core of it, right? I like to talk about, whoops, unmute, dude. I'm not sure if you know Scott Summers, but when Jay hosts his Twitter call-ins, he always has to tell people unmute, dude. That's the internal.
I'm not talking. Joke. I don't need to unmute. What is?
No. He's saying it to Neurojack.
Oh.
No, I got a phone call at the same time that you let me.
Okay, fair enough.
And I couldn't unmute until I went out of the studio. So sorry about that. My bad.
No. Go ahead. What did you want to say?
Well, I just wanted to catch the flow where you guys were at in the conversation, because I think it's a very interesting topic, and what you were just saying about the level of complexity on warfare and how that kind of applies. Are you kind of talking about technology overall, or just kind of any system getting too complex to where it's just unmanageable?
Literally anything grows and complexity.
Can I just chime in just for like 1 second? Because
Yes.
I don't know if I'm getting this. Like, obsolescence is a principle in economics by which, like, a certain commodity or good or service, is no longer seen as value. So, like, for example, in North America, people are switching over to plastic Christmas trees, right? So we have these farmers that have planted all these pine trees that have now basically, they have this idea that they're gonna, in 7 or 8 years, sell these Christmas trees, blah, blah, blah. And now, like, economically, due to people's whatever understanding of climate change, or that's a loaded thing, but or like floppy disks and VHS and like switching over to CDs or USBs. Is this an aspect, or am I just totally off?
Yes. So that's why planned obsolescence as a phrase is different, because it's intentional, right? But you have the whole idea of, what was it, like, it's not creative destruction, what was it, like destructive capitalism? There's a phrase people use that you sort of destroy certain occupations, whether through innovation, right? You don't need a lot of blacksmiths today, because you have all manners of complex technology that can process metals of all types. So you see, you've abolished the village blacksmith, but you now created this giant system that employs a lot of people and metallurgy experts and things like that. Horses are not something we rely on today, but you get the cars, etc., right? Things advance. So yes, obsolescence is something that cannot be avoided, except if you completely halt any progress.
Right, but what you're saying is that, like, each thing is so complex and interconnected with the rest of the system that it always has some unexpected consequence. Like the car, for example, the innovation of the car has radically changed how people live. Now, instead of living in, communal centers where you can walk to church, now I have to drive 30 minutes to church, right? There's these unforeseen consequences. We're trying to move towards something that we perceive as better, right? This innovation idea that things, the more that we innovate, the more that things are efficacious. Not. Is that like a chainsaw? Like, we can cut more wood, but now we have this unforeseen consequence that we're destroying ecosystems, and those ecosystems, retain water. Now we have more flooding because we have chainsaws.
Yes, so things that can have consequences that are extremely far-reaching. But it's part of the development of technology to the extent that you can retain the advancements. Right, because you also have things like the Bronze Age collapse, where now trade routes are broken and very difficult to make alloys that get something from Cyprus, the copper from Cyprus, and tin from modern day Afghanistan, and then that be made into an alloy called bronze, right? So you've lost that ability. Also, as you said, things as they develop, they grow in complexity, and that can be very organic. It can also be sort of nudged, as we know, with different types of movements. But the thing is, let's say, like traditional gender roles. People didn't just sit there and start thinking of what a gender role is. It sort of just comes about from living a very hands-on life, right? You don't have too much technology helping you. So you're going to get a natural division for women and men what each sex is doing to maintain civilization, right? But as you get the advancements in industry, a lot of men's jobs become very difficult, but rather tedious and stuff. They're away from home most of the day. But then you get home appliances, which leave women with a lot more free time. You don't have to wash things by hand. You get them, you put them in the washing machine, and now you have a lot of free time on your hands. So that causes civilizational ripples.
Right? You should tell my wife that. You should tell her that she has a lot of free time.
I will, because I'm at the safe distance. Right, but again, compared to how things, I always tell people, try having a thought experiment. If you had no electricity or the modern types of fuels, right, how difficult would it be to brew a mug of coffee? Of course, that would be something unaffordable to almost everyone, a couple of centuries ago. But I'm thinking, imagine you had coffee and stuff, but you had to go get water from a spring. You had to then you have to start using fire, to actual live fire, to start boiling the water. Then you would have to collect those things, right? You can't just press a button or turn a knob to get it done. So imagine how much more effort goes into that. With dishwashing, you had a lot of cooking. You had all sorts of, you had to cook, especially underwear and stuff like that. But then you had all types of chemicals, that were used for bleaching and stuff like that. And then dishwashing, right? You can't just turn on a faucet or something and then do it right there. Right? It was a much bigger, much more time-consuming process. So it's not about having a lot of free time. It's about having a lot more free time than you would have lacking these technological advancements.
Yeah, and also it also changes the way you do things, because the process of doing all that will also the complexity of something like washing dishes makes it so complicated that you also live your life in a way to where you try to use the least amount of dishes to accomplish what you need, rather than just use 10 dishes to cook something, rather than just simplify it and boil everything in one pot and eat out of the pot or something like that. You know what I mean? It's it kind of leads to other complexities that you can't even really think of until the technology gives you the options, right? So then you have all these choices with how to do things that you didn't really consider until you're already in the middle of using it, right?
Yes, and you can become very wasteful.
Right, and now we have this whole system of plumbers that need to come out and fix your dishwasher, need to fix your laundry machine. You're co-opting with this mechanical entity, which is on your knowledge.
You're breaking up a lot, Scott.
Sorry. You want me to just say it again?
Yes, I think it's stable now.
I was just saying that now that you have a dishwasher, you have a whole service economy behind the dishwasher. You need to have a plumber to fix it, or your laundry machine. You have to have this whole other system. The mechanical entity has it's beyond your own personal means of knowledge and energy to be able to fix it.
Yes, that's definitely the more complex the system is, the more specialized knowledge you need to be able to deal with it. And talking about service economies, one of the biggest ripple effects of during the housing boom, you got a lot of auxiliary, businesses that were started, landscaping and all sorts of specialized things for pools and different types of tiles and whatever. But then when the crash came of the housing market, right, those businesses also didn't have anything to do, right? So yes, it ripples all throughout, and you can't exactly foresee it, but that's why you try to make a system that isn't reliant on just being against a thing, which is the point of my my attempt to create this notion.
Well, and also the other thing is, like, you know, there's this unintended consequence. Like, we all live under the system where we collectivize public utilities, so no one really owns it, but we all have to pay for it, but we have no control over it.
Yes, but you also have the problem in Britain, right, where you have this semi-private, semi-public thing, which always ends up being the worst of both worlds. But nevertheless, I'm not in principle opposed to nationalizing things, especially when you compare how railroads and this type of public transportation is dealt with in the United States and in Europe, like Great Britain, compared to continental Europe. Because in continental Europe, where we're not like my liberty and stuff, they work much better. So I think it's more of a slogan to say, oh, everything public is nonsense. No, and if you want to privatize water, you're asking basically for tyranny of the corporations like Nestle.
But and I agree with you. But my other point about that, sorry, the plane was going overhead. But my other point with that was also the, you know, like I live in California, and so, like, you know, most of our water gets, you know, routed in from kind of pretty far away, because fresh water is kind of hard to find in California, right? So then you have to have this water treatment system and the public utilities, and then now all these people are kind of freeloading off the system, and then nobody knows exactly where it comes from. And so, you know, it's just, you're so mediated from the source of what you're using, and then because the population is now so dispersed with free time, and everyone has their own little niche that they're in, and everyone's busy maintaining the system by doing their job or whatever, but there's no connection to it at the same time. And it's you know, it's like you need to keep adding levels of complexity on top of it. So it's like this kind of overbearing thing. And you can just see that it's like there's really no solution other than to kind of, unfortunately, kind of just let it go and start over from scratch and just do it in a more, you know, that's kind of the weird thing about this whole like climate change and environmental stuff is like there is a lot of truth to it, but they kind of don't tell you how severe the problem really is. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the complexity of the situation. They just say, well, it's carbon, and it's like, well, I think they are aware it's a lot more complicated than that, but they just do it because effectively they have to reduce the amount of people who are feeding off the system, essentially, because you can't just keep exponentially growing a level of complexity forever. You know what I mean? Like, it's just going to get to unless you have, you know, unlimited energy, which of course they don't. So, and unlimited resources, which of course they don't. Right. So
yeah, you get a level of management that needs to deal with the workers, but then the management starts abusing its power. So you start at a level of management to deal with the first level of managers, right? And then you keep layering on, not to talk about nepotism and, you know, trying to skew your stats, you know, by employing people in the public sector. So, oh no, everything is fine. You know, the old communist thing of having 12 people milk a cow. You know, we have full employment. Yes, I understand. It can very easily loop into nonsense. I also think it's very important to have a cultural idea of how things work, because when Romans had the idea of what was it called, time of exception, where they would elect a dictator, the Senate would, you know, elect it. First it was like 2 consuls, and it was just 1, because things are so dangerous that for a while, for a period of time, we elect this guy, and his word is literally law. No complaining, no appeals, no nothing. His word is law. And if I am not wrong in this, only Julius Caesar took that longer than the period of time. They all just surrender power willingly. Why? Because it's a cultural thing. It's a religious type of thinking.
So FDR was the Julius Caesar of modern days?
I think technically there was no term limit. It was sort of a cultural thing that he broke that you just go for 2 terms. But because of him, I think you added the 2-term limit for presidents.
Hey, Posh, I wanted to clarify my point. I'm at work, man, so my brain's a little scattered. I don't even think I made my point because I was just rambling. But what I was trying to say is that sometimes what seems like intentional obsolescence may be a product of just a large company. And what I meant by that is, say you are a software engineer working for either Photoshop or a video game company, and your only job is to find and fix bugs. Not that you're an editor or a programmer, but your job, to justify your job, you have to find problems and fix them. Otherwise, what are they employing you for? If something works perfectly, they don't really need you. So I think a lot of these big companies, I guess what I was trying to say is, what it seems like it's intentional, but it may just be a product of a large company, is that they have people working in them that have to find and fix problems. And when they do that, they end up screwing up. I mean, Photoshop is a great example. I don't know if you've ever used Photoshop, but Photoshop will be running perfectly fine. Everything's great. And then you see a software update, and then now some of the buttons don't work, or a slider is messed up or broken. And so it would seem like, oh, this is planned obsolescence. They're just wanting us to keep, you don't have to purchase the updates, but they want us to just keep updating this thing. Whereas it's because companies have become so large that they have people that, to keep their job, as I say, when you're a hammer, all you see is nails. And so to keep their job, they have to, like, quote unquote, fix things. And so it sort of appears from the outside that, oh, it was programmed in to break. That's what I was trying to say, man. I just rambled there.
And just real quick to add to that, also, like, the whole business model that everything is switching to is subscription service. So they need to justify for you to pay for it continually. So they need to continually update it to justify you paying for it. With it, you can't just buy the product and use it. You have to continually update it. So it's like,
you need DLCs.
Yeah. And this could apply to, you're talking about like Apple phones or just cell phones in general. If you're a designer and you create the perfect phone, and then like a few years, they do updates and you don't keep creating new phones, then you don't have a job. Like I know eventually you would, but they have to stay busy to justify their positions and justify what they're doing. That's what I meant by it, is that the people in the companies that are forced to change things and alter things to make them better, as they say, and then they end up breaking it. But anyway, man, I'm gonna hop off. I just wanted to clarify that point. God bless you, buddy.
Thank you. God bless. Right. So this is also a very often people mention the whole thing of you have this either NGO or literally a department of a government that is supposed to deal with homelessness. Right. So if you fix homelessness, you're sort of out of a job now. So your job is to work yourself out of a job, and people don't tend to be very fond of that procedure. So I see what he means, but so it can be intentional, it can be unintentional, which is why if you're cynical, you're always going to go with, it's everyone wants to destroy me and take my money, right? But then on the other hand, if you're so optimistic and trusting and naive that you would say, oh, no, they would never do that. You're not trying to appraise properly what's going on, right? You're just going from this pre-programmed answer. And look, it's Petra Garde.
Hey, finally got to catch a daytime stream, man.
I went earlier. I don't have much more time. I've got like 20 minutes. But happy to be the daytime stream.
Yeah. Well, I don't have super long either, but you guys are talking about something that is near and dear to my heart and my profession. And something that you guys were just talking about is, a mixture of bug fixes and like finding bugs and hyper complexity, where, things just become so complicated that it's like, let's just tear it all out and start over. And it has to do with a pet theory I've been working on, because a lot of what I do at my job right now is CVE vulnerability management. So common vulnerability exposures, stuff that you find in hardware, firmware, software, where hackers can get in and create vulnerabilities that can either, exploit the system or, do classic ransomware, somehow extort you for money. And the number of vulnerabilities coming out every month just keeps going up. And I have no idea how, unless you have a massive staff that's just constantly looking to remediate these, the bigger your environment becomes, the bigger an organization is with more software and more people. It just seems like we're hitting a critical mass where like we're going to have to just rip out the way that we do, digital commerce and start over, because there's going to be some exploit that just ravages everyone.
I just want to add to that real quick. Like if
Sure.
I don't know how this is known throughout the country, but in California, at least, there's a lot of cities literally being held for ransom because people are hacking into the city system and hijacking it. And I say that to say this, I talk about William Gibson, Neuromancer, and stuff like that. Is like,
I love that book.
He theorized about a lot of this, how basically out of security services for digital stuff, basically you'd have to create AI like gatekeepers, like basically AI that can automatically defend against attacks. And that's kind of where AI really started to become sentient, because you need this like in real time defense against constant attack of the system. You understand what I'm saying? And like that's that's the only route they really had to go. And I think that's why I'm so obsessed with the technology question, because it's basically like an arms race where you can't ever stop. You know what I mean? Like you can't stop,
Yeah, well, exactly. The software that I use to protect stuff where I work every day has behavioral and like automated response built in, and it has evaluation, and it's learning from us, quote unquote learning. It's decision-making algorithms give weight to actions that we take as security analysts and engineers when we're in there. So when we allow programs or we say this thing is a false positive, it starts to pick up on that, so we don't have to write as many rules manually. But I actually don't like that, because then there's a tuning element that's kind of, if you get someone who's just like, this is all noise, close. It's like, oh man, did you just like screw it up? Is it gonna just like ignore that now?
Yes, because again, it just replicates, as you said, what human actors do. And human actors, unless you are very, very disciplined and very much acting aware of that this is happening, you can see how it can learn, basic laziness.
Yeah, exactly. We're teaching it to be the lazy cybersecurity engineer, and then we have
just opens Task Commander and just closes everything.
Yeah. Peter will go back,
Control Shift Escape,
untune all this nonsense I just did. But look at me, I cleared out the ticket queue. It's like, dang it, man. No, but yeah, in Neuromancer, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot with now the private chat GPTs that they have available, the large language models. Like, I always thought that would be the best use case scenario for something like chat GPT, because when I go to chat GPT, I want it to translate code that I've written into another format. Like, I'm not a programmer by nature. I'm a programmer by necessity of my job. So I'm not a very good one. So when I need to convert something from Python into C# or into Java or whatever, it's sometimes faster to have something rewrite it, even if it's 90% or 80% there and 20% wrong. And they now have these private ones out. One of them is called Wizard Coder. All it knows how to do is code. So it can't write a 13th rule for life with the style of the Tao Chi and the New Testament Bible for Jordan Peterson. It can't do that, but I also don't care for it to do that. I don't want it to do that, and it doesn't need to be able to tell me how to bake a perfect apple pie. I just want it to do the one thing I want it to do, and to do that well.
The most important and revolutionary AI is the gaydar one. Did you guys see that?
So
like it can over 80% accuracy just on like the picture of your face.
Yeah, it just takes a picture and it just says you gay or not.
It exists. I don't know if you've heard. Like they've tested it.
Seriously? I have
Yeah.
not heard of this. I am
I'll
going
have to send it to
literally
you.
check this out. Yeah, I will absolutely be checking this out.
Yeah, with about 90% for men and like 80 something for women. Like
Well, I'm gonna have it on
AI
my phone.
gaydar.
I'm gonna have it on my phone. I'm gonna walk up to each of my coworkers and be like, "You gay?"
So let's take a selfie, and then you just crop it and use it for nefarious purposes.
So I just wanted to chime in. So we're talking about the complexity of systems when they get too large. We mentioned like this problem of specialized knowledge. I'm still trying to understand Posh's main premise of unplanned obsolescence, that you don't create a system that is in opposition of something. So like, for example, like, could you make an analogy with this conversation? Like we can't have a conversation that is against the government, but we can have a conversation that is for homesteading and more simplified communal living, something like that.
It is something that has to be based on very basic things. So a homesteading movement is like a remedy for urbanization, right? And urbanization comes from all types of advancements in technology that make it possible. Of course, the biggest one being mechanized farming, right? If you need, like, if you have a tractor that can do the work of 100 people, you're not going to have 100 people doing, like, tilling the soil. So what are they going to do? They're going to move into the city and try to do something else. But you see, what I talk about would be akin to like the Luddites, right? Trying to break the steam engine to retain like a certain status quo, but it actually does nothing to the fundamentals. Right, so you can be opposed to industrialization, but then you would become obsolete by mere inquisitiveness, and saying unless you want to go to anarcho-primitivism, you are some type of Luddite.
Well,
and it's going to fail.
And you'd have to enforce it, and that's the thing. Like I had this, I had this like off the top of my head comment I made on Jim Bob a few days ago, and I want to reiterate to you to see what you think of it, because I kind of have been taking in a lot of content lately about this subject, and what I said to Jim Bob was, when you look at Stefan Molyneux, he's talking about everybody's arguing over the gun in the room, which is government. I think now, and it's always been this way, it's actually over technology. Like everyone's wrestling for control of the technology, and you can't, because you can't enforce, like you said, like a Luddite can't enforce what they want to do, because if they reject the technology and everyone else uses it, they've lost the game. You know what I mean? They can just get run over. And so we're kind of in this situation. And for me, the question is, as Christians, how do we balance that? Because it's like, on the one hand, we have to use the technology to defend ourselves. But on the other hand, we can't really just go around enforcing our will on everyone, to make them how we are. So it's kind of like we're in this situation where we're kind of facing this kind of like situation where we can't really act morally and act, in a survival of the fittest at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Like we have this kind of situation where it's kind of hard to really ascertain the morality of the situation with technology,
Well, it always is a problem, right? If you have incredibly destructive weaponry, you can say it acts as a deterrent, right? The MAD doctrine. But at the same time, it is always in tension of, okay, what if someone uses it? Right? It's like having a thing so you don't have to use it. But when it comes to things like AI, like with industry in general, it's very difficult to foresee things, because unless you have a government that's powerful enough to respond, right? Historically, I like giving this example. You had the Holy Roman Empire, and you had France on the other hand, on the other side of this spectrum, where you had a pretty decentralized Holy Roman Empire, and sort of ironically that the empire is decentralized, but nevertheless, the nobles had a lot more power, as opposed to the nobles in France, where the king was much more imbued with a lot more direct power than his counterpart in the HRE. But that meant that because both were Catholic and the Pope can sort of, give his dicta, if he threatens the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, the nobles can see that as an opportunity, right? Because they're so close to power. Whereas in France, it's also thanks to the wonderful humility of the French. They sort of they get a papal order. So what am I to do with this, you foreigner? But you see how you have the strengths and weaknesses of either side. But France, because of its centralization, was able to stave off these foreign influences. Even though it came with the idea of the guy with the crown, who was probably called Louis, can do a lot more internally, right? A lot more power to abuse. Whereas the guys where you would expect, it's more decentralized, meaning people are going to do this and that, they were the ones who were more susceptible to foreign influence. So likewise with technology, right? The government will have to really crack down in order to be able to crack down effectively. Otherwise, now you have this foreign influence in this sense, a non-governmental influence that can actually force the government to doing things it wants, or the people who have that influence want.
And that's something that you're bringing up something else that I'm passionate about, which is you're talking about how to use tech in a responsible or ethical way. And that's something that I think there are a lot of questions like what you just talked about, where, a company ends up having an undue influence on a government. For instance, like a lot of state, local, city, tribal governments will think like, oh man, like cloud technology, like, yeah, let me just park all my data out in Microsoft Azure. And they don't realize that once you get out there, the cost of getting out of there becomes so high that you can never escape, because you're federally required to maintain X number of years of data. And so now you're stuck, and it just becomes ever more expensive because now they know they have you like a beached whale. And so they're like, oh, it's just going to go up like, another 0.5% this year, guys, for your data logging. And more on that is, as we're talking about the weaponization of tech, something that I've been thinking about a lot is trying to carve out a career as like a contractor, or maybe starting up like a company of some kind, where aiding state and local governments to become secure enough to withstand, cyber attack. Because, we have the National Guard and physical army for, any type of physical attack, and a physical attack against a typical American state or state government would be pretty difficult for a foreign actor, but cyber attacks would be much easier. And it has the inverse benefit of when you're, people talk about, resisting the feds and standing up against the man, which, it's a necessary thought in our current day, but how would a state government resist the cyber capabilities of a three-letter agency? And in my experience today, living a lot of places, working a lot of places, and sometimes for a state government, the answer is not at all. And so strengthening, using your skills to strengthen your local area, strengthen the infrastructure for power, sewer, water, all that stuff locally, if you're in IT or cybersecurity, I think is a good benefit, because the stronger a state or local government is, the higher the chances, from a cyber perspective, the higher the chances they can withstand an assault. Or maybe it's too troublesome to attack all the states if they're too secure, or they could actually resist. I don't know.
But why would you need to attack all of them, right?
Exactly.
You wouldn't need to you don't need to stab a person in every limb on their body, right? You just go for where the viscera are. People aren't like stupid. They know where to attack, what would cause the most problems, attacking energy grids and stuff like that. But again, I understand how you would know with your expertise how possible that is, but there's always this relationship of like the immune system and then the disease, and then just keep one-upping each other.
Oh yeah, that will never slow down. It's weird how much that stuff matches digital viruses and digital cures, if you will.
Yeah, you know what that reminds me of, what you were just talking about, and I'm sure Posh knows more about this than I do, but it reminds me of the French Revolution, where you have this like bureaucracy that works with merchant class, and there's like this infinite level of complexity and greed and all this, and then you have the Jacobins, of course, taking advantage of all that and then blaming the
I gotta jump off. See you
and
guys.
all that.
Okay, God bless.
So I was just wondering if that makes any sense, the what he's saying there, because I see more similarities with the French Revolution more and more. The more I look at the currency,
Everything bad that happens has its analog in the French Revolution. But yes, because you always try to, use your weight to go and gain influence. And then other people also want to do that. So when you try to legislate to either respond to that, and then these people legislate to get the influence for their cronies, right? And then it becomes just a giant mess. And you can think of the Soviet army as well. Like, it had so many layers of people that the chain of command became incredibly ineffective because what are you going to do? Like, and again, in the French Revolution, ironically enough, everything was like solved by mere fiat, which ended up being the White Terror, right? And just killing everyone to try and get things done, because complexity arises almost immediately. And of course, you have now people who have been wanting this moment to be able to make the decision, and not like the powdered-faced nobles. And when you have people who want to take it at even a slightly different angle, when you're that close to being able to make your particular decision happen, right, you are now at odds with everyone. And things go bad very quickly, and they just, collapse. You cannot maintain. It's artificial, like keeping someone in a vegetative state, basically. Yes, the person's alive, but it's only a matter of time before that person just dies when you have to pull the plug. Okay, I'll actually have to get going now. We're at almost like 9:30 where I am. So thank you for calling in, Scott Summers and Eurojack, also to Matthew and Petra Garde. Sorry that we had a shorter one today. I will do. Sorry.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for calling in, and God bless.
Posh, I wanted to tell you really quickly that I walk dogs for a living, and I completely sympathize with your hate of dogs.
Thank you. Like, you are forced to endure torture for daily. But you see, it's always like people who get actually close to the source tend to agree with me, and people who don't have to deal with dogs, they just go, no, they're furry little angels. Sod off.
Good. Awesome. All right. God bless. See ya.
God bless.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Posh. And I think this is a really interesting topic, and I hope we get to talk about it again. And God bless.
Yes, I will work on it more. Again, this is like the basic outlines, and we'll see where it goes. Maybe I need to retire it. Maybe I need to break it into multiple different ideas, etc. But I do appreciate the feedback.
Yes. Have a great day. God bless. Bye.
You too. God bless. Okay. Well, thank you for being here, everyone. I'm very close to being monetized, so we'll have the membership system. I'm at about 3,700 hours out of 4,000 necessary. So there will be like then I'm going to pester, as I said, Jim Bob to make emojis. But we'll work things out. So then we're going to have like the super chats and all sorts of fun things. But that being said, I will stream again on Thursday. Tomorrow I'll be talking with Garrett Dawn, but that might be a bit too early for you people. It's like 3 p.m. for me. That's CET, Central European Time. So Baron Strawberry is going to be able to watch it, and D Sims. So I don't know. At his so Garrett Dawn. And I'll post like a thing on the community tab for all you who are able to and willing to watch that, talking about like worldviews, and he's into critiquing this human design thing. So we're going to have fun. Okay, yeah. So Kruter, I suppose Kruter is from Germany, right? And we have Shareholders United from Sweden and stuff. So yes, we have. I think about 85% of my audience is American. That's what the statistics say. The second largest group is from Canada, and then the UK. Okay, promote on Jim Bob's Discord. Okay. I'll see what I can do. Discord is still witchcraft to me, but I understand. Okay, so thank you for being here, everyone. God bless you all, and talk to you on Thursday.